All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Congressman Stephen Horsford. Thank you for joining us today as we get into the start of the Memorial Day weekend and obviously commemorate the lives of the men and women who have served in our nation's military since the Revolutionary War. And this is traditionally a time of reflection, of appreciation, of thanks. It's also a time where we start to celebrate the beginning of the summer. But unfortunately, we are at the edge of an economic cliff that could plunge our nation's economy into an economic crisis. And so today I am here to talk about the fact that Speaker McCarthy and House Republicans have decided to adjourn the House yesterday with no clear plan or a timeline for how they would save our country from default. The first time ever we are in this situation just a week away from the obligations to continue to meet our debt. Now, I joined with many of my House colleagues yesterday on the floor to demand that Speaker McCarthy stay in session, that he keep the House in session until this manufactured default crisis is resolved. My constituents in the 4th Congressional District of Nevada sent me to Washington to solve problems, to protect their interest, and to ensure that their jobs and our economic prosperity are preserved. So don't just take my word for it. I want to share just a small sample of what some of my constituents have been sharing with me about what the default would mean to them, or the Republicans' Default on America Act, how it would impact them. So I'd like to turn to them at this time.
Greetings from Nevada. I'm Christine Hess with the Nevada Housing Coalition, our statewide nonprofit to advance and promote affordable housing. Unfortunately, we have our country's most severe shortage of affordable housing for our families, seniors, and veterans, and homelessness is increasing. With the default looming, Nevadans already in crisis are at risk of personal devastation from some of the potential consequences. We implore Congress to have a thoughtful discussion about priorities. Now is not the time to cut successful and critical housing programs for our Nevada families.
My name is Thelma Manning Hall. I reside in Congressional District 4. I am a senior citizen. I would not be able to get my Medicare. I would not be able to get my check. I would not be able to go and get medical assistance or treatment. I would not be able to use my prescriptions. So I would be negatively impacted. My income would be negatively impacted. I've worked for the government for 31 years. It is earned.
Jeff Klein, and I am president of Nevada Senior Services. Clearly, we're very concerned about the default that looms in front of us in Washington, the impact it has on the seniors and people with disabilities that we serve. We're deeply concerned that the supports that are necessary to keep seniors in their homes, home-delivered meals, congregate meals, respite for families through the Older Americans Act, home modifications, grab bars, ramps, all initiatives to help keep our people safe in their homes as opposed to going into institutions. Supporting Medicaid in Nevada is a major initiative, and slow checks to seniors who rely on their Social Security would send many into deep poverty and possibly cause them to lose their homes. Many folks have HUD supports to help them get through their homes. Low income housing is just a critical issue for Nevada, and we are in short supply. And anything that slows up the cash that comes to the state of Nevada to support state programs for seniors, or the direct supports that go to beneficiaries, our seniors and persons with disability, is insanity. It is going to crash our system and cause us irreparable harm. My prayer is that our Congress will do the right thing, pass the debt ceiling increase and avoid a default, and pass a budget that supports seniors, people with disabilities. As our population grows and ages, we need to be mindful that if we don't take care of our elders and those in most in need, then it speaks loudly about our society. So we're thankful for Congressman Horsford and his leadership, and hope his colleagues will come along.
Hi, I'm Nikki Preston with the Hospice Veteran Partnership of Nevada. We work with veterans by educating them on the end-of-life benefits available to them. The cuts that are proposed in the Default on America Act would threaten the medical care for over 96,000 Nevada veterans, which would result in 30 million fewer outpatient visits for our nation veterans all across the country. That means over 96,000 veterans could lose access to outpatient visits in Nevada, leaving them unable to get appointments for their care, which includes wellness visits, mental health services, and substance abuse disorder treatment. Working with veterans at the end of life, they tend to revisit the trauma that they've experienced throughout their lifetime. Cuts to this necessary mental health benefit would make it difficult for their families to continue to take care of them, as they cannot relate to the situations that they have been through. How does this help our nation veterans after all that they have done for us? I am also a grandmother of two amazing granddaughters who rely on the Women, Infant, and Children program in Nevada. The Default on America Act would mean that 13,000 women, infant, and children will lose vital nutrition assistance through the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women and children. There would be an increase in child poverty and in hunger. I see how hard it is as my son is trying to raise his children, how difficult it is with the minimum income he brings home. If we lose the Women, Infant, and Children program, how will my grandchildren be able to receive the proper nutrition that they need?
Blessings, love, and light. I'm Christina Thomas, retired Air Force and chair to Southern Nevada's Veterans Advocacy Council with the Mayor and Governor's Challenge Team for Suicide Prevention. Our veteran initiative and whole health wellness will be directly impacted by the U.S. default. We work on filling the gaps for housing, hiring, homelessness, youth, and family services. Our community is facing turbulent times. The Default America Act would also jeopardize the benefits of our veterans, 60,000 of them, and kicking 73,000 families off SNAP food benefits and 253,000 off of Medicaid. If this passes, the mental health crisis, homelessness, and suicide within our community will in fact increase. We constantly search for stipends and funds to fill those gaps for veterans and families in our everyday local experience. Gutting funding that's already spread so thin would devastate our community.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Gary T. White. I am a veteran and also a employee for the federal government. We're being played like a pawn again. They're willing to make the little people, us, the proletariat, suffer. What we're dealing with now is absolutely ridiculous. Thank you very much for your time.
Congressman Horsford, please stop the Republicans from allowing the United States government to go into default. As a veteran, if we go into default as a nation, this will affect my benefits, and I won't be able to pay for some of the normal bills that I use my veterans benefits for, such as simply living. And there are many veterans who are much more dependent than even myself. So I beg you, please stop the Republicans from defaulting and make them pay the bills that they are supposed to pay.
I want to thank Christine Hess, Ms. Thelma Manning Hall, Jeff Klein, Nikki Preston, Christina Thomas, Gary White, and Mikey Kelly for sharing their concerns with us. And there's so many more constituents who've contacted us, who've expressed concern. And that's why I'm demanding Speaker McCarthy bring the House back into session and to pass the bill to raise the debt ceiling so that we can avoid a default, protect the jobs and the economy, and do what's necessary to fund essential services that my constituents and constituents all across the country depend on. In fact, we already have a bill ready for him. All 213 Democrats in the House have signed it. We only need 5 Republicans in the House to sign on, and we can have a clean up and down vote to prevent this economic tragedy. This is a self-inflicted crisis made up by extreme factions in the House Republican Congress. It's time that it stop. And, what I want to share is Nevada's been through some tough times before. We came through the pandemic. We obviously experienced one of the worst housing crises in the country in 2009, 2010. And we're still struggling right now. Families are struggling to make ends meet. In fact, we're in the middle of a housing crisis where rents are still escalating. It's hard for a lot of families to make ends meet. Yet the Republican plan to force a default would actually exacerbate that crisis. You heard several of my constituents mention that in the video. If Republicans force our nation to default on paying its bills that it's already incurred, this is not new spending, this is spending that was incurred previously, including by the previous administration, the average Nevada homeowner will see their monthly mortgage payments increase by about $180, increasing the total cost of buying a home by $64,000. That's just unsustainable. My Republican colleagues will say that they passed a debt limit increase. Well, what they failed to tell the American people is that their bill holds hostage the very programs that help people like those that I represent in Nevada and all across the country be able to afford their bills. In my district alone, their callous plan would jeopardize health benefits for 60,000 veterans. It would kill over 7,000 jobs. It would threaten the retirement savings of over 96,000 of my constituents who are near retirement, eliminating $20,000 from the typical retirement portfolio. It would kick 73,000 families off of SNAP food benefits. These are mostly children and seniors, and affect more than 250,000 people who currently receive their health care through Medicaid. Under their heartless plan, Nevada would lose 1,300 preschool and childcare slots, which is vital to helping Nevada families actually return to work, something that they claim they actually want to do. I work to pay for itself, and that includes providing child transportation and necessary services. It would raise the cost of a new car loan for the typical person by $800. All as they say no, and the corporations and the ultra wealthy, they owe just their fair. I'm willing to work with anyone on either side of the aisle to solve some of the most complicated problems that our country faces. But what I'm not willing to do is to have my constituents held hostage. One, to a self-inflicted debt default crisis that Speaker McCarthy has made on his own. And I will not allow the budget to be balanced on the backs of the working people that I represent. They're just asking for a shot, an opportunity to a good living. So I really would like to thank you for joining us. It sounds like we were having some technical issues there at the end, so I'd be happy to take any questions that members of the press have at this time.
Congressman, we got one quick question from Gabby Birnbaum from the Indy. She would like to know, what would you like to see from the White House in terms of messaging on the deal making?
Yeah, I've expressed that I believe the president shares the values and is working hard to reach an agreement to avoid this default. What I'd like the president to do is to use the power of the presidency, the bully pulpit, and explain to the American people the dire situation that a default will have on our economy, on the jobs. You know, we've created more jobs in the last year and a half than has been created under any administration in the first 2 years. And this default could risk 8.3 million jobs being lost, many of them in my state. And that's unacceptable. I also want the president to let the American people know what he's put on the table in the negotiation with Republicans to help identify savings in our federal budget. For example, he proposed a plan to have prescription drugs be more affordable in order to save cost for Medicare and other parts of our federal budget. Republicans rejected that plan and haven't agreed to include it. Why not? I want that to be explained to the American people. Some of this is being shaped as if we're not willing to find ways to cut areas of the budget, and that's simply just not true. But what we're not going to do is do it on the backs of working people, seniors, veterans, children, people who are working hard to make ends meet, while the very rich and big corporations don't pay their share. So I've called on the president to use the power of the presidency, like I have done in other circumstances. I believe that this is a critical time dealing with the default that's at hand. We're only days away from the deadline that's been set by Treasury, and we cannot allow our nation to not meet its obligations for the first time in our history. Well, what I'll just say in closing again is thank you. I'm going to continue to work to find solutions to make sure that we avoid a default. There's legislation that's ready. I need 5 Republicans to join all 213 House Democrats, and we can vote an up or down clean debt ceiling lifting of the legislation, and then work to find common ground on a way forward on our budget that doesn't balance it on the backs of working people while also making the very wealthy and big corporations pay their share. So thank you for joining us today. We'll continue working throughout this time, and I call on the speaker to do his job by bringing us back into session so that we can avoid this default.